This podcast is sponsored by Magic Rock Brewing. Currently, you can get free delivery on all orders over £40 and 10% of all online orders by using our code of TakesThatChance10.
Christopher Schindler has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance! Town down the left and Moy stayed onside. Here's Mounier! 2-0 Huddersfield Town on the opening day of the Premier League. 1-2 wicket Tunga. Here's Moy, right-footed. 1-0 Huddersfield Town. Lindelof misses his header. De Quattro's in. Round De Gea. 2-0 Huddersfield Town. 2-0 Huddersfield Town. Here's Sanka to turn it into the pass. Yes! And Tommins scored. Tommins has scored one of the most important goals of Huddersfield Town's history. De Quattro's forward. De Quattro's got the better. Yes! And Laurent De Quattro scores. Laurent De Quattro scores.
Welcome to Andy Takes That Chance, the warm-up. Happy New Year to all, and should all acquaintance be forgot and never thought upon? Absolutely not, because it's Reading in the crosshairs this week, and there is one game with them we shall never forget. And with me, as always, to preview this game is Quiz King, Brady Frost, and Happy New Year to you and Mr. Markham. How are we doing?
Happy New Year, mate.
Fantastic. So, town host Reading this Saturday, and growing up, I was always told that Reading were a bit of a bogey side. And they used to have this striker called Trevor Senior, who used to score against us quite a bit. During that specific period, which started around 1985, and that's not when I started going, by the way, up to 1993, when I was told they were a bit of a bogey side, we only actually won twice in 19 attempts against Reading, which gives a little bit of credence to the fact that they were a bogey side at that point. So it's unsurprising that Reading have the better head-to-head record with us. Reading, like a lot of clubs lately, we never really played until we tumbled down the divisions in the 1970s. We've met on 53 occasions, though. Reading unbeaten in 6 games in the Cup. Town winning 15 league games, 13 draws overall, and 25 Reading wins in all competitions. Today's memorable game is not the playoff final, but going back to 1996 when Town broke that curse. And we won 3-1 at the then McAlpine Stadium. A double from Rob Edwards and a goal from the legend that is Andy Booth. Town were in 6th with 7 games to go in that season, which is the same now, Tier 2, Championship level. Shouldn't really talk Tier 2, should we, at the minute? And a slump source finishing 8th spot, which was a bit of a shame. The Brian Horton era. Brady, I'm not going to ask you if you remember much about that because you're a youngling. Chris, you must remember a little bit about that Brian Horton side and that particular era, a little bit.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it was obviously straight after the 2 seasons after the Warnock days, and he did really well that first season. Brian Warnock.
Brian Warnock.
This one, isn't it? No, Brian. Who's Brian Warnock? It's New Year's Day, mate. Give me a chance.
You could say Brian Warnock because it was pretty much Warnock's team, wasn't it, with Brian Horton?
Yeah, Brian Horton. Sorry. Yeah, it's New Year's Day. Sorry, lads. But yeah, that team, I thought he did really well that first season. Obviously, that 95-96 season, he inherited a couple, lost a couple. And he did well to have us up so high, and obviously it didn't end well for him. But that team was, he tried to play a completely different style of football, didn't he, to Warnock? And I know he tried to. I've watched the since the season review DVDs. When you look back, he really makes a lot of discussion around how he's trying to change the style, trying to play a different way, and I want to enjoy watching us and all that. And I think he did for certainly that season anyway. It didn't end well, but
no, it was decent, wasn't it? And I think he got improvements out of a couple. Like Darren Bullock became a quality player that year. He was outstanding that year, and he even brought a couple through, didn't he? Like Simon Collins played a lot that year, and he did, yeah. Simon Collins. Who else? Sam Collins was a little bit later, wasn't he? His brother.
Yeah, a little bit later than that.
But yeah, he did all right. Tom Cowan did well as well in a passing team before Tom sadly injured his knee, didn't he? And and then his career ended up winding down.
Rob Edwards was a great, like, if you forget that we signed him, I think people remember him for that season when he scored the winner against Lincoln. But when he was like a bit of a jobsman left back, but he was brilliant. He was a deadly striker when he first came, played off the both wings that season. And he was a real danger man, great left foot.
The idea was really get Steve Jenkins on the outside and Rob Edwards would come in and just smack it on his left foot, and he had a right shot on him. I remember the first goal he got against Luton, I think. And they had a 7-foot goalkeeper did Luton. I think he was called Ian Foyer or something. His surname was Foyer. And he absolutely smashed it past him and he never saw it. It was fantastic. But enough of the reminisce on New Year's Day. Brady, up come the Royals, so give us the lay of the Manor estate.
Yeah, so Reading are a weird team. And by weird, I mean, Chris will probably go on to say, but stats-wise, they're a mess. Like, you can't really predict them. They've been a bit of an odd team, but they're 6th in the table. I think it was that'd be a bit of a surprise at the start of the season. And they're only 6 points ahead of us, so it does kind of show you how weird this league's been so far. But what was quite interesting, they've only won one of their last 5 away games. So yeah, quite, starting to stutter a little bit. We didn't manage to get a fan for the chat for this, but I did get one for our kind of match preview article. And Simeon, who's from the Tilehurst end, he's basically said they started focusing on being hard to beat, but they've sort of slowly progressed the playing style and become a bit more expansive, but they do have quite a few attacking injuries, so we might not see that expansive style of play in the game. But it's a bit of a weird team, Reading, basically, is what I'd say. But I'm sure we'll go on to the strengths and weaknesses shortly.
Yeah, let's do that now then. Strengths and weaknesses of Reading. So for me, it was a side that were top of the league earlier in the season, and that's despite not having John Swift from the first couple of games as well, and he's an outstanding player at this level. But they were almost a bit of an anomaly in some ways, Reading, and they got a lot of unfair criticism as well earlier on from independents, shall we say. And maybe some of it was warranted because it felt like every time Reading entered the opposition half and had a shot, they would score. And their conversion rates were absolutely out of this world, for shots to goal ratio. And they were top of the league by a little stretch at one point. I think at one point they could have almost stretched it by 10 points. But they've slid a little bit since. Reading fans may point to injury, but others might point to the fact that they're not scoring from every shot now. But for me, Reading look a decent side and a decent shout for grabbing, maybe the 5th or 6th spots, for the playoffs. Chris, tell us about the main strengths and weaknesses then of Reading.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that obviously you guys have mentioned. I'm going to start with us almost looking at, like Brady said, around their stats and sort of trying to get a gauge of what type of team they are. They are just a lot of the form stats. They're just middle of the road, or like just 6th or 7th. So obviously when they started, they've had the best away record, the best home record, the best first half, the best second half, and since then they've really dropped. And most of their things, if you look over form, at the last 6, 8, 10 and 12 games, they're bang in the middle of the league between 15th and 11th in all of those. So you really get to see how much they have dropped off recently. And I do think until they get the players back, they'll end up being a mid-table team and just try and be hard to beat. You look at the injuries that they've got. Zhao is obviously the huge one. He's got 11 goals already this season. Pushkas is another, I think he's a good player at this level. Maite is another one. So the 3 of the top 4 scorers are out. The captain's out, and a really good right back for this level in Yeardom. So they are missing a spine to the team. But although Brady said they've only won one of their last 5 away games, they've got a solid away record. They've only lost 3 of 11 and have a +1 goal difference. So that's something for them to sort of hold on to. In terms of strengths and weaknesses, I think they seem to have a similar profile to how they play, and maybe it's that sort of European style manager to Barnsley, strangely. So they don't score and they don't have many shots, so that, for instance, in away games there's only 4 teams with less shots than them. But they also, like Barnsley, concede the fewest shots per game. Reading are the 3rd fewest, same as Barnsley. They're not really a crossing team, so they look to work the ball into better areas. And yeah, it's going to be. I think it's going to be a tough one for them. I think this game is one you look at and they're a few points ahead of us in the table, but taking everything into account, form and what sort of record at home we've got, how they're stuttering at the minute with their injury records. I know we've got some injuries, but I really fancy us in this game. I'll lead us in to their danger man if you want. I'm happy for one of you guys to go first. How many have you got? All right, okay. I'll take the less obvious one. I think the most obvious one. We'll see if you get to it, and if not, I'll give him a shout out. But I'm sure you will. I'm going to take Rinomhota. He's a young centre midfielder who was actually born in Leeds, as we found out this morning. But he's really energetic, and he's one of the few, a lot of players that they bring through their academy. You know, that's one thing you've got to really admire about Reading over the past 10 years. Certainly, that they do bring and develop, and certainly give opportunities to a lot of players through their academy. So he's one of these lads, even though he was a Northern lad, and he's really energetic, been a strong presence, decent on the ball, young lad. I think he's getting a few looks from higher. And I think he'll be him and the Semedo, whether they play him as an 8 or a 10 is a different one. But with those two in the middle of the field, they do give him a real energetic feel to that sort of area. So I think that's a real interesting one for them, and might be where the game's won and lost in the middle of the field.
Bradshaw.
Yeah, so I think this isn't my player, but I think, again, I went for someone because I feel like we'll cover their star man. But I actually went for their keeper, Raphael. He's been a bit shaky this season, but last season he was quality, and he's one of those keepers where he's a classic Championship keeper. You see some games from him where you're like, oh my God, how's this guy not in the Premier League? He's amazing, and then he'll put in a howler. But I do think. I agree that Reading are quite vulnerable, particularly the fullbacks. They're quite weak defensively. You can kind of get in behind them. So I feel like he might be quite a busy lad. I know we don't create a lot of shots, but I think, we will trouble Reading, and I think he'll need to have a good game. But that's kind of who I've gone for. But again, I think me and Chris are thinking of the star man.
Do I go for the tap-in?
Yeah, you do. We'll finally leave you one.
I've got two here that I've highlighted, and you said neither. One of them's OG Avaria, who I think's a really good player, tall, rangy player that was formerly at Liverpool and Rangers. But the tap-in has obviously got to be Michael Elise, hasn't it? 4 goals and 7 assists this season. Scored a couple of good goals as well. Actual goals and assists are higher than his expected assists and goals as well, which shows that he's performing at a higher level than he either previously did or is expected to do so. So yeah, he's a good player, isn't he? A talented player that seems to have really come to prominence this year. So he's definitely one that we'll have to watch.
I think he's the one where he's going to be your next one that goes for 20 million plus.
He's like the next Eze, isn't he? Eberechi Eze.
Yeah, next Eze, and the David Brooks. He's more similar type to maybe Brooks, with obviously his left foot coming in from that right side. But he's a serious player. Like, you look at some of his goals and assists. He's only 19.
Yeah,
he's athletically the part as well. And I tell you what, there's some real big teams looking at him, and he's it's another one that's going to go for big money from the Championship. I'd say of the younger crop, we talk about the top quality players who are established in this league. I'd say this guy is the pick of the younger crop.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, because Reading's kind of main source of strength is their set pieces, and he's really good at set pieces and delivering like free kicks and some kind of corners too. And like you say, for a young lad, that catches the eye because, to be good at set pieces. I mean, a lot of teams...
That consistency in it, yeah.
Another challenge for Harry Toffolo then, who's shown up pretty well, I think, so far to challenges this season. Chris, what are our strengths and weaknesses for Huddersfield looking at Reading then in particular?
Yeah, I think, like I've said, I just think at the minute it's a really good opportunity to play them. I think the main strength is we can be a little bit more expansive because of the lack of firepower. I'm not saying we're just going to go gung-ho and that they're not going to score. Watch now, we'll lose 3-0. But, I think it'd be interesting if they bring a Luco back to maybe have a bit more pace up top rather than... play through the others. So that'd be the interesting one for me. But I think it could allow us to be a little bit more expansive. I'm not always an advocate of getting both fullbacks forward at the same time. You've got to have that security behind the ball. Maybe this is an opportunity where we could maybe do that a little bit more. And potentially, rather than playing obviously Bacuna or Brian as a wide player, or mixing between them two, it might be a potentially one for a Pritchard or one of the more offensive-minded players on the bench where you actually play two out-and-out wingers. So I think that could be I think just the whole, I think we're quite evenly matched in terms of style, and I think just our difference in, plus our home record, I think it'll allow us to be a little bit more expansive and maybe commit a few bodies forward.
That's fair enough. Brady, what key player have you got for Town? Do you know, how do you lead Town into, or what do you see as our strength, and what player have you picked for us to be our key person?
Well, we've picked him a few times, and this is Chris's fan club, but I've gone for Lewis O'Brien. I think the reason why is a thief. Sorry, I think the reason why because I think Stephen Chicken commented on it as well. But in the last few games, Bacuna has been playing on the left, but they have kind of swapped positions during the game, and I think O'Brien would admit he's not hit the heights he did last season, but I've noticed he seems to be starting quite slow in games, but when he does make that switch, I mean, we saw it time and time again last season, but he can break forward, and I think that's where he might be quite useful, because he's surprisingly quick. I think that's what we see. He seems to just get past people, and I think his relationship with Toffolo when he does, on and off the pitch, but when he does go on that left wing, I think that'll be a real area of strength. So, like everyone's kind of said, with Corona out, it's kind of been quite a good, stopgap. So, Lewis O'Brien.
Yeah, so that's something I've said on the last 2 or 3 podcasts as well, that first 20, 25 minutes, Lewis O'Brien slowly gets into it, and then he kind of kicks on, doesn't he, for the rest of the game. Chris, who's your key man? I've got a weird one that no one's going to pick, so I'm going to throw it to you first.
All right, nice. I'm going to go with a little hat tip to Toffolo, I think, like you mentioned there, just to keep Elise quiet. Like you said, I think it was maybe unfair. I think that when I last picked him, it was Bournemouth away, and we lost 5-0. So, but I think it's unfair to put that on him. But obviously, he didn't keep everybody quiet, which would have been very difficult with the team that was picked. I think in terms of, we'll give him a hat tip then. So I'm going to go for Hoggy. I've not picked Hoggy yet. And I think this one, like I mentioned, with their strengths in the middle of the field, their athleticism, and the way that they'll play, I think this will need to match their energy and physicality in there. And I think where we win this battle will be in there. With that Hoggy being that little nitty-gritty one, and allow the others to be a little bit more forward-thinking and just keep things ticking. And obviously, I think he's been playing really well recently, and I think every season everyone thinks, is this the last one? And, like everyone, knowing him well, he does have dips, and I think in the past, he's sort of, we've been worried about him playing all the games over this period. I know when I was there a while ago, he just seems to be getting better and better physically, which is great. So, yeah, I'm going to go for Hoggy this one. I think it could be, if we dominate that middle of the field, we'll have a good chance.
Okay, I could probably give you guys 10 guesses each, and you probably won't get the player I'm going to pick. But so unless we make some early moves in the January window for a striker, then I think Cian Harratt is going to have to start playing some games, because Fraser Campbell, to me, looks dead on his feet the last couple of games. He works really hard, does Fraser, but he just looks absolutely shattered. And with Danny Ward still not back, weeks away, I think, from fitness, there's a lot of burden on Fraser Campbell. And I think the key really now at this point of the year is rotation and getting the right kind of rotation. So maybe it's not Cian Harratt as such my key player, but my key decision, if you like, will be that Carlos maybe needs to start using the 5 substitutes rather than 2 after 70 or 80 minutes. And maybe using them earlier as well, and keep players and things a little fresh. So my key really is to use players like Cian Harratt and rest the likes of Fraser Campbell, etc.
I do find it interesting that he's not using them, because you would be using him. If there any time of the season, you'd be using him at this time. You'd be changing the team. We said it after, I know he did it at Bournemouth, just sort of like the sacrificial lambs went out.
Yeah.
But I think he's not changed it as much as certainly when David was here, when we was the other foreign manager that obviously I worked with, he changed it a lot, and he hasn't done that much. Now I'm sort of starting to read into it. Is that because he doesn't want to weaken the team by bringing them on? Because that's quite a big statement to make. These lads have gone out on a few lower league loans, and some of them have come back better for it. You look at Edmonds Green, obviously being the main one, but it's interesting that he's not using them, I think.
Yeah, you do wonder whether it's a trust issue or whether it's a quality issue. I think at some point he's got to rotate them before they fall to bits, especially with the level of games they've played. I do worry that there's. I think Arsene Wenger coined the red zone, didn't he? So you would imagine there's several players in the red zone.
I think they'll have a right bash at this one, and it wouldn't surprise me if a couple played against Plymouth. I saw Wardy's going to be back in training next week, and I think he might just flog him out one more time. But I'd massively take your point.
Yeah, So that was so that's for me really. Is just to get the rotation right. So. The next thing is for our little feature, isn't it? It's Return to the Mac, a player that you would bring back to win this game. Lauren Dewaptra beating Ian Dunn for me was a farce. The bloke scored once in 18 months and didn't want to train because the grass was 2 millimetres longer than he wanted it to be. Recency bias again, I think.
It's disgraceful, mate.
He's still down. I think he's still down London somewhere on the back of a rickshaw. Is Lauren Dewaptra?
That's the only reason why he got voted, because he had a fag out and was pictured with his arm around a young lady after that game. I'm telling you now, he scored one good goal, scored a goal, 2 goals off errors, obviously important goals, but oh wow!
I am dying to hear Brady's New Year resolution of what player he's picked. I'm dying to hear this.
Well. Right, if I'm going first, because it's New Year's Day, I don't know if we've got this person before. Reading are really good at set pieces, and that's where, and we're kind of weak at corners and stuff like that. Just to mention as well, this isn't my player, but I think Schofield still needs to improve a little bit at corners and set pieces. But I've gone for a defender, and I think this guy was no nonsense, and we might need this. I've gone for Peter Clark.
He's been had. He's been had.
All right, okay. I'm going to go for Sean Morrison then, just because
he hasn't. No nonsense. He was on my radar to pick at some point with Sean Morrison. So Brady's beat me to it. Yeah. I thought it was cracking Sean Morrison as a player.
Yeah, good lad. And obviously, we've seen how good he has gone on to play for Cardiff in the Prem. And again, I'd love him back at the club. I think he's class.
A little bit of recency bias there, because he's still smashing it to this day, isn't he?
I can accept that. I wouldn't look at him and think, he's an easy pick for everyone to just pick on my poll.
No, he's decent though.
Oh, thanks, guys. He's still jealous.
Who's your easy pick then, Chris?
I've not got an easy pick. It's starting to get more difficult now, and especially like I've said a few times, I haven't picked people from recent years for a few reasons. But
I've not on this one.
Pardon?
I've not this week. Mine's
me neither. What I've gone for, as I mentioned before, around we'll be able to commit a few more bodies forward, so maybe bodies from the midfield. We need energy in the midfield. Physicality. This guy played in a 2 a lot as well, even though he was able to get forward. He wasn't like he scored important goals. I always remember him coming up when we needed him, and I think, like you're saying, if people like Fraser Campbell are starting to slow down a bit, and obviously you can't rely on Naby Sarr, unfortunately, scoring 2 every week. I think we are going to need some goals from midfield. So I'm going to go for
Marcus Browning.
No. probably scored one of the goals in the best atmosphere I've ever been a part of as a Town fan, and it was at Main Road that season with Stewart and Vinard up front, and the atmosphere that day was absolutely outstanding. But and he scored a header from nearly the edge of the box. Yeah, so Chris Beach,
Chris.
He always seemed to score important goals, get in the box and worked his tail off. He was a hard-working, sort of working-class lad, a bit like, what we're saying about Hoggy, really sort of solid, dependable, and really important team player. So I'm going to go for Chris Beach. He could score a few more goals than Hoggy.
I always thought Chris Beach was a 90s more gritty version of Michael Collins, if you like. One that would kind of make those forward runs and score. I remember the goals he scored against Derby in the Cup as well. That was good.
Yeah.
The 22,500 actual fans in the ground, not a gate attendance as well against Derby in the FA Cup, and him going through and flicking it over the keeper and the crowd was mental that day. It was amazing. That was a great day. That.
Yeah, Chris Beach.
Okay, so I don't know if Brady will have heard of this guy that I've gone for, and he's not from the 1920s or anything. But right, so we need a striker. For me, I think we need a striker at the minute with Ward not available. Fraser Campbell looking incredibly tired. The man who I'm bringing back this week scored 38 goals in 83 appearances, which is pretty decent for an abject Town side as well. This was a bad Town side that he was in, and he was a standout player. He was Player of the Year in 1987.
Oh, wow.
And top scorer in both the 86, 87, and 87, 88 seasons before being sold to Swindon. Do you remember when we used to sell players to Swindon?
Yeah.
Depressing. The man I'm bringing back is an international footballer, and he is?
Craig Maskell.
No, Duncan Shearer.
Shearer?
Oh.
Yeah, Duncan Shearer. We did sell Craig Maskell. I think he went to Reading, though, didn't he? But he ended up at Swindon.
Did we sign him from Swindon then or something?
Craig Maskell. I might have to Google that. He was at Swindon when they got promoted, wasn't he, in the playoffs?
I do remember him being synonymous
with Glenn Hoddle's team, wasn't he?
Yeah, Duncan Shearer, though, great shout.
Yeah, Duncan Shearer for me, powerful striker, great, could hit a ball incredibly hard. I've only seen him on video, so I've had to go back a little bit. It's a couple of years before I've started supporting, but I do know a lot of people speak highly of him, and I do remember him as a footballer when I started watching football up in, when he was playing for Aberdeen and a couple of others as well. He was a class act. So Duncan Shearer is my pick. So I've gone for Duncan Shearer. Brady's gone for Sean Morrison, and you went for Chris Beach, didn't you? There we go. New Year's Day. I'm not doing too bad. Right. So next feature, it's time for us to don David Wagner's blue baseball cap, Carlos's skinny chinos, which won't fit for most of us just after Christmas, and Mark Robbins' glowering expression as we try to predict what will happen, as we are the coach. So Danny Green won't be in consideration, which is a shame. We've seen over with Carlos's press conference. Neither will Rolando Aarons, who we believe may be close to joining early on in January, which could give us a little bit of freshness. However, what are we going for? Shall I go first? Because I've not gone first.
Yeah, you go first, mate.
Right, so I'm going for the same team, basically, keeping the same side. I know I've gone on about rotation, but I would start with the same team, but I would rotate more during the game if possible, and that's Schofield, Pippa, Roman Emmons-Green, super striker Naby Sarr at the back on this occasion, Harry Toffolo, Hoggy, Bakuna in the middle, Eiting, who Eiting looks absolutely shot at the minute, but I feel like he's been flogged a little bit, and he's one that needs to be rotated, but there doesn't seem to be anyone particularly that we could rotate him with, although Scott High is back, so I would imagine I would like to see Scott High on the bench and maybe have a spell at some point with Eiting where possible. O'Brien on the left, and Benza and poor old Fraser Campbell ploughing that long throw up there. Prediction-wise, I think it's a tired-looking Town side, and like you say, I don't see us creating a lot against Reading, who are quite tough, but I don't see like Chris says, I don't see Reading creating a lot either. So I've gone for a 1-1 draw in this one.
Okay, go on, Brady.
Yeah, I mean, same lineup as you, Matt. I think we're at the end of this crazy run, and like you said, we're playing Plymouth, and I think there'll be a lot of rotation. And I would bring on players in this game later on, because obviously we can make 5 subs, even though, as we've talked about, Carlos doesn't really like to do that. I think same thing really. But I do think Reading will score. But I think I'm basically going to go. I think it'll almost be like the Blackburn game, where we have enough chances to kill it off, and then they get back into it, but we manage to sneak another somehow. So I'm going to go 2-1 Town, and I'll be well happy with that.
So would I. Yeah.
I'm going to go. I agree. Obviously, there's not many changes to make. The squad's not really deep, is it? It's still interesting how we're not seeing Vallejo at all. He's been here enough now to really get a chance if he's gonna. Maybe it could be again like the Plymouth game, like I said. But the only change I potentially made, like I said, you could go a little bit more offensive. I think I made a case for playing Pritchard a little bit more, and obviously I'm going to continue with that. If you wanted to change it, maybe go a little bit more offensive, bring him in for Bacuna or I'm not going to drop O'Brien, am I? And play him out on the left, get him coming inside, getting Toffolo going on the outside, give them something to think about. I'm a lot more optimistic for this game, certainly than Matt. I just look at them and think that it's been a long period for them. They obviously had I think it's a good result getting the draw at Swansea. So they'll be reasonably buoyed. I think they'd be happy with 0-0, to be honest. Our first half record now at home is the second best in the league. So I think we'll be 2-0 up early on again, and I think it'll finish 2-0. I'm quite sort of bullish for this one. Unusually. Obviously, I look at the players they're missing and just think they'll come and sit. They will make it difficult. We are going to be free scoring, and it's not going to be a 5-6. So I'm not like getting that carried away. But I just think we could be, score one early and it'll really deflate them. I think the longer they've got something to hang on for, the longer it could be 0-0. So I'm going 2-0, and I've never got one right yet, so I might just guess twice and say 0-0 as well.
So is it 2-0 or 0-0? I've got no idea.
2-0. 2-0.
Right, so Chris and Brady have gone for wins. I've gone for a tired-looking draw. I hope I'm wrong and those two are right, obviously. I prefer Chris to be right because I'd like a nice, easy 2-0. That sounds nice and comfortable. But that's it for this week. So thanks for joining us for the preview show. Thank you again for joining us in 2021. Happy New Year to all Town fans out there. And we'll be back with the main podcast after the Reading game.
Oh, what a night. Late in May in 2017. Schindler scored, it was a heaven dream. What a feeling, what a night. Oh, what a night. Wagner singing, we are Premier League. The greatest sight St. George's Square did see. What an evening, what a night. Oh, I got a funny feeling when he walks and a fence, and then the commentator yelled he takes that chance. Oh, what a night. Lost so safe and mesmerizing me. Low charge and flattened all Chelsea. Stamford Bridge, oh what a night. Whoa, I got a funny feeling when he walks and a fence, and then the commentator yelled he takes that chance.